Welcome back to Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. I'm your host, Austin Duncan, and very glad to have you back. We had a great episode last week with Eric of Die Ghost, and really excited to get into this week, too. We've got a fun episode planned for you today, talking about the most underrated Michael Myers Halloween movie of all time. And it's gonna, if you watch the podcast and you've watched my takes on some of these films, it's gonna come as maybe a bit of a surprise. And speaking of surprises, we do have a surprise guest on the podcast.
Dude, everybody's so disappointed right now. They thought it was going to be Jamie Lee Curtis, but it's just the half the team here is back.
Dude, it is amazing to have you back on screen on the podcast with me. We had a good couple of weeks.
Dude, you did awesome. It was fantastic.
Thank you very much. Blaine was out feeling nasty.
Dude, I was sick as hell, bro. Like I mean, you know that, but I was down. Like I had my appendix out and did the show the next day. That's how sick I was. That whatever the hell I had, I tested negative for COVID twice, but whatever it was knocked me completely down and out. And yeah, man, I'm excited to be back. It was honestly, it was kind of fun to watch the episodes because it's like seeing it from a different perspective. And you know, obviously we record these episodes and of course we go back and watch them, but I already know what's going to be talked about. I already know what's going to be said. So it was a lot of fun, and no, you did an awesome job carrying the torch, and yeah, dude, I'm super excited to be back.
Well, yeah, it's definitely good to have you back. I think, by week 2, I had felt a little bit more confident, but definitely going into that first week, I was like, oh my God, we don't have a guest. I have this show that we haven't missed an upload yet. We switched from Mondays to Fridays, but we still made that work. Right. And like, to me at this point, like it's a pride thing that we have not missed an upload. And, you know, we've been going consistently now for 20 freaking weeks, dude. How crazy is that?
That is crazy. And what's even more wild about that is that when we first started out, the plan was not to do necessarily a weekly podcast. We were going to do a podcast. If we did one once a week, once every other week, whatever that is. And then we just realized how much fun we had doing this as brothers. And it was like, dude, we could do this every week. And then week 2 and 3 and 4, and it just started all rolling together. And it's like, we're weekly now. And we are the only weekly Halloween podcast out there. And yeah, dude, you did an awesome job. The fact that you talked in that one episode for an hour, like you literally just talked for an hour, my throat hurt for you. So yeah, you did an awesome job. And obviously can't thank you enough, for carrying the podcast on for those weeks, because it would have been easy to just kind of roll over and say, hey, we're going to take a couple of weeks off until Blaine's back. But no, dude, I was super stoked to see you do it. I'm glad you did it. And as we've always said, the show must go on, and you did fantastic.
Well, thank you. I gotta shout out whatever brand of cough drops I used after that first podcast, because man, I was like out of commission after that. But like you said, the show goes on. We're back at it, and we have a pretty fun episode to get back into the swing of things. You're kind of like you're like the injured player coming back onto the field. You gotta,
we're gonna see how it goes. Yeah. Yeah. Are we worried that I'm going to re-injure myself? There's sort of like you gotta crawl, then walk, then run, but we're not going to do that. We're gonna literally come out of the gates running as fast as we possibly can, because that's how we do it around here.
Yes, sir. So, I've been doing some introducing of the episode. Tell us what this week is about, Blaine.
Yeah, so we kind of were talking, what could we do that would be a lot of fun, something fun to talk about. And it was Austin's idea. Once again, great idea. And he said, let's basically each pick a film that we don't think gets enough credit in the Halloween franchise. So, you take any of the films that maybe get dogged on, and realistically, it's the same sort of probably 3, 4, 5 films maybe that all kind of get dogged on by fans of the franchise. And so we're going to pick one of those, or each are going to pick one of those, kind of defend it a little bit, talk through a little bit, and maybe, just maybe, there's somebody out there who's going to listen to this and go, you know what? I like what they're saying. I'm going to give this thing another watch and see if I can't change somebody's mind. Or maybe we change somebody's mind with this is what I should say. I will say that when we were talking about doing this, my movie that I initially was going to pick was Halloween Ends. That was like, in my mind, that was the easy choice for me because I thought, man, we've talked about this. You think it was a great movie. I think it was a great movie. Yes, we understand the complaints. Yes, we understand why people don't like it, but we both are fans of the film. I just think that's a really easy answer because everybody has been talking about it recently, and it would be too easy of a choice, I guess. So we have come up with two separate films that we're going to talk about tonight. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? What do you think? You're kind of running the show now. So I'm just sort of riding in the passenger seat at this point.
Yeah. So I can go based off of kind of what you just said, and there for me too. And we didn't talk about that specifically, but for me too, I was like, oh, I could talk about Halloween Ends because to half the community, I would argue it's underrated. Right. But I like you said, we've talked a lot about Halloween Ends on the show, and to the people who don't like Halloween Ends that watch us every week, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I'm sorry because we keep beating you over the head with this.
That's true.
So I decided to shift gears, and I went like one thing that we say consistently.
You didn't shift gears. You put it in frickin' reverse, my friend, and you're going the opposite direction of everything that you've said up until this point. So sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but you didn't shift gears. You're going in reverse.
No, so that's what I was going to get into is we have made a point on this show to say there is no such thing as a bad Halloween movie. We love them all. There's a place for all of them. We're going to watch all of them every October. And I got to live by what I say. And so I went, what would be probably the hardest movie for me to defend? And after doing a little bit of research, after kind of filtering out my thoughts and thinking about this before we started, it's going to be a hell of a task, but I am going to roll with the most underrated Halloween movie in the franchise is Rick Rosenthal's classic. And I ain't talking H2. I'm talking Halloween Resurrection.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's lost his damn mind. Since I've been gone, the train has got off the tracks. I don't know what happened in the last 2.5 weeks, but yeah, I'm going to need some explaining here.
Listen, man, by the time you walk out of this episode, you're going to put it above John Carpenter's original. Okay.
Oof.
No, obviously that's not going to be the case. But I did, for me, I saw it as kind of a challenge. What could I do? How could I explain that this is an underrated film? Because I think to the person who's seen all the movies, he's a casual horror fan, but maybe not quite as into it as we are. Influenced by the media, big Halloween, they might go, Resurrection, it's a pretty horrible movie, right? And to that I'd say you might be right, but I'm going to tell you, give you a little different perspective. So when it comes to Halloween Resurrection, I think we've talked both how this is a very special movie to us. And I think anybody who grew up around the same time as us remembers the rollout of Resurrection, because obviously you had H2O, which was pretty well received. But it was clearly like set up to be the end of the franchise. Michael Myers gets his head chopped off with an axe in the very last 5 seconds of the film. Literally the chop happens and we're right back to John Carpenter's original theme. So I think the rollout of Halloween Resurrection was a lot of like, how is this going to happen? Jamie Lee Curtis is back in it. What's going on here? And then I think people watched it and maybe had, similar to Halloween Ends, had a certain preconceived notion of what the film would be like when they walked into the theaters, and then walked out experiencing something drastically different. And yeah, so let's get into it. To me, when I think about Halloween Resurrection, I think of it as sort of the rebrand or the tried rebrand of the Halloween franchise. And I would argue that maybe the seeds of that or the first buds of that came in Halloween H2O when they tried to introduce comedy into it. They tried to update sort of the vibe and feel. Obviously, Halloween H2O we talk about is very Scream influenced. But when it came to Halloween 8, I think it maybe stands on its own two legs a little bit more than Halloween H2O, even though I do prefer that film H2O. I think this feels less like a Scream. I don't want to say ripoff, but there's no other way to put it. I think this film brought something new into the franchise that we've seen in other Halloween or not in other horror movies moving forward with this. Obviously we have like found footage that you could say is Blair Witch inspired. But I think this is very like reality TV based. And that was the big craze in 2002 when this happened. I mean, you got shows like Big Brother, Survivor, all these shows that were focused with security cameras, watching people's every move. You're getting into the live stream era. Now, they were a little bit ahead of their time. I don't think there were too many people with a dial-up modem doing live streams back in the day. But it did bring this new sort of technological aspect to Halloween and made Michael maybe scary. I think that was the goal, was to make Michael scary in a new way that we haven't seen him before. And people talk about the characters in this film. They're kind of all different cliches. I don't even have the names of these other than Sarah right off the bat. Sarah is a very classic final girl, but you've got the chef who thinks it's something to do with Michael's diet. You've got the I think he's like a music major, like band guy. Jim. Jesus, look at you.
Well, the only reason I remember that it's Jim is because I think personally, the writers were trying to base Jim off of Jim Morrison and the door singer. And the only reason I say that, and this is just pure speculation on my part, but he's like this very cool guy. He's wearing the leather jacket. He's I don't know. There's just something about him that I'm like, I wonder if they were trying to kind of make this like a Jim Morrison kind of character. But yeah, and then the chef is Rudy. This is how much I love this film is I think it's Rudy. Isn't it Rudy?
It might be Rudy. I just know he's the dude that's like, well, it all starts with the diet. What is this? He's like, Hitler was a vegetarian. Look how he turned out. I don't know.
Yeah.
It gets weird. And then you've got like but what I was going to say about Jim Morrison is he's sort of like getting into the psyche and talking about, like, he says he's like the great white shark. He's talking about how Michael Myers is in all of us, which is something I talked about 2 episodes ago, with like intrusive thoughts and kind of the darkness that's in everybody. And then obviously you've got like Sarah, who is more interested in the upbringing of Michael Myers, something that we really had not talked about up until this point. And then you've got characters like the redhead who's talking about it's got like some political reason or whatever. But I do like that now that you've killed off Laurie Strode in the first 5 minutes in the movie, spoiler for something that happened 21 years ago. You now have to go back and go, okay, how do you, if you want to continue this franchise, which I'd imagine that Rick Rosenthal did at the time of this build. I don't think anybody thought that it would kill the franchise the way that it did. You kind of have to go back to where it all started. And I appreciate that about the film. I mean, it's really cool. You don't see a whole lot of the exterior of the Myers house in that film, but it is the original house with, vines and cracks in the wood.
Very rundown, very abandoned, even more so than you see in 78. Yeah.
Totally. And it's probably a little unrealistic to what you would see in a, Haddonfield seems like a pretty well-to-do neighborhood. It would be weird to have just one house on the block that, looks like Swamp Thing.
I feel like the city inspector would probably be all over them. Like, excuse me, whoever owns it, the bank or whoever, you need to cut the damn grass. Cut the grass.
And just knock the house down, man.
Right,
it looks like shit.
Right.
And whatever. It's fine. But I do appreciate that part of the film, especially because we've got other films where the Myers house looks nothing like the original. But they try to stay true to character, true to like the look of the original, and that's something I do want to talk about. So it's really tough to say and swallow my words here because I went back and I looked at our ranking of the movies and the masks. Not only did I put Halloween Resurrection at the very bottom of my ranking, but I also talked so much shit about The Mask. And I think to a degree, I did say, I think with a different paint job, it would be a totally different mask. But if you look at that movie in some of the scenes, I would argue this is probably the most Kirk-like sculpt since the H2 Kirk mask, or I guess the Halloween 4 recast or whatever that is.
Under very specific, and we talked about this, under very specific lighting, that mask is freaking sweet. And it has the cheekbones, and I know you talk about like there's a huge gap between the nose and the upper lip, but it has that very like bow lip or whatever the hell it's called, right? I mean, it's just a very Kirk-y looking mask like we saw in 1 and 2 and 4, obviously.
Yeah, and I if I remember correctly, there was some sort of legal reason that they couldn't go back to the Kirk mask. I know that's why they couldn't have merchandise that looked like Kirk until Trick or Treat Studios came around. But yeah, I think especially in that opening scene where Laurie is looking out the window, and things are foggy in that underground washroom or the washroom. I think those are some of the scenes where the mask really looks like the classic H1, H2 Michael Myers that I think of personally when I think of Michael Myers. So I think maybe I talked a little too much shit in our, it was like our 4th video. I was trying to throw some bold takes out there. But I still hate the eyebrows on that mask. It looks like Jessica Alba in Idle Hands. It's too polished and clean. The skin is completely smooth. It's shiny. And then obviously you've got the eye paint thing going on, whatever. Besides just the mask reminding me of the original Michael Myers, something that we've talked about, and friend of the show, Brad Lurie. I think he killed it in this movie. I think his movements were a perfect sort of mishmash of, you've got obviously a lot of like the movements of Nick Castle and Dick Warlock, but then he's pulling out the like pull up or pull down thing from H2O that was introduced. He's very much like a mix of the original movies and then the sequels, which I really appreciate. And it's interesting now kind of looking at it, comparing him to James Jude Courtney, and seeing their similarities and differences. But one huge bright spot of the movie is Michael moves and acts the way I think he should in that movie. Where, we've talked to Chris Durand on H2O, who kind of brought something new to the character. And it wasn't necessarily inspired by Castle or Warlock. It was his own take. And while I do like that, I think for me, give me the way Michael moves.
Right.
I do prefer that. Everything's sort of pushing towards the future in this movie. Obviously, like I talked about with Dangertainment, you've got the reality TV side of things. Even Deckard and Sarah are sort of like the new age couple. They're talking in a chat room. Everything's electronic. His buddy even says like, dude, you haven't even seen her in Yahoo chat rooms, doesn't count or whatever. And it is sort of like trying to show the difference between, a couple like you see in 78 that are, having sex in 10 seconds and being done versus another couple in 2002 that haven't even seen each other. And everything's sort of facing the future. And I appreciate that they did that. It does feel gimmicky looking back. But I think a lot of the movie, like if you're looking at it on paper, it's not bad. I think some of the actors' performances, obviously you've got Busta Rhymes in there, who, even though it's funny that he's in there and some of his lines are just downright stupid, obviously you've got the classic
trick or treat, motherfucker.
But
makes me want to throw up when I hear that.
He plays the character of like kind of a slimy TV host pretty well, and I never thought I'd like shout out Busta Rhymes' acting chops. Maybe that's just how he is when he gets on camera, but I thought it worked. Like he's definitely somebody I could see hosting like a Big Brother or something like that in 2002. No shade at Julie Chen though, but I think he was a great character. Tyra Banks though, complete opposite. She did nothing in the film for me.
No.
And you don't even see her die on camera, and probably the coolest looking death in that film. Kind of similar to the one in H2O where she's hanging from the light. But yeah, I don't know. Looking back on the film, I think it's a fun time. It's not the best. I put it at the bottom of my list, but I still think that to a degree, Halloween Resurrection is underrated. And there's good reason for a lot of the hate that it gets. But I think, I could argue it's better than other films in this franchise. I struggle with putting it above Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I think if I redid that list, it might look a little bit different. A, to make me not look like I'm contradicting myself from the past, but B, just because there's a certain, level of Halloween film, and it is in the bottom one, but I don't know if it's necessarily the worst. I don't know. I think it's worth a rewatch. Appreciating the good things in it rather than looking at it just as like a dog shit horror movie and maybe watching it just for the comedic aspect. What do you think of Halloween Resurrection, man?
Well, I think the first thing that I'll say is that you're completely wrong about everything you just said.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
No, I'm just kidding. So here's what I'll say about Halloween Resurrection. I'll give you my likes, the things that I liked about Halloween Resurrection. And then we can talk about sort of the misses, I guess, in my mind. I think you totally hit the nail on the head with Brad Lurie, right? Very, very awesome job. He had the movement down, what you expect of Michael Myers. And, looking at like you talked about with Chris Durand made that character his own by not having any idea what the hell he was really doing, in a sense, right? And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but he had never even seen any of the films. He didn't know how Michael was supposed to walk or act or anything. So good on him for doing that. Obviously it worked. It wasn't like he was pulled from being Michael or anything like that. Brad, however, talked about how he was a fan of, the classic 1978, and that he studied that a little bit to figure out exactly how he was supposed to walk and act and move. Now, some people may look at that and go, well, he was just ripping off what Nick Castle did. Yeah, he's doing the same thing as Nick Castle. You're right, but Nick Castle is the standard. And when you're looking for some continuity amongst these films, which is very hard to find, given the fact that you see the masks change. There's not a lot of characters that are carried from film to film to film. So continuity can be difficult. I think when we see a Michael Myers that walks, and acts the way that we expect him to, that's a huge win in my mind. I mean, so, huge shout out to Brad Loree. He did a fantastic job. I don't know what other way to put it. We kind of talk about the mask and we shit on the mask, and yes, it does hold a special place in my heart because it was the very first Michael Myers mask that I ever owned. We've talked about it. It was the very first Halloween film that I saw in the theaters. I think I was in like 7th or 8th grade, something like that. I mean, it was somewhere around that time. And so it does hold a special place in my heart. I really truly believe, or I really like the idea that it was all taking place, or not all, but a lot of the film took place in the Myers house. I thought that was really cool because, as we've talked about, the Myers house is a character in itself, right? And though I'm not a fan or a huge fan of Halloween Kills, we've discussed like the fact that they brought the house back into Halloween Kills, and they sort of made this story, or part of the story, revolve around the house. I thought that was awesome. Like, that was super cool. The house in itself is a character. Really no different than, if you look at the Amityville series, right? The house is a character. You couldn't have an Amityville movie take place in another house because it just doesn't really work. And they have tried that and it doesn't work. No different than how Halloween 5 and 6, it was not the real Myers house, So I love that they brought the house back. I agree that you would probably never see a house be so overgrown and, out of I mean, somebody would have, some kid would have lit that mother effer on fire and watched it burn, or the city would have knocked it down, right? I mean, that's just realistically how it would have gone. But I do appreciate what they did. I do appreciate that they brought it back. I also really like the idea of doing this reality show. They were, as you mentioned, like they were just sort of, riding the coattails of a lot of things that were happening in society at that time with culture, different things that were changing in our world. Everything was switching to reality TV, and you talked about Big Brother and Survivor. And I mean, reality TV was just becoming such a thing. And I love the fact that they jumped on that. And they really, like I said, they were riding on the coattails of other successful shows that had really happened at that time. I'm sure there's other things that I like about that movie, but right now that's about as far as I can get with it. I thought the characters were good. I think they could have developed some of the characters a little bit differently, a little bit better. But what I will say is I think Halloween Resurrection was about as close as we could possibly get to the franchise literally taking a nosedive into the ground and it turning into the Hellraiser franchise, where we're just getting direct to video sequels. And that really kind of sucks because you had just come off of Halloween H2O, which was this big budget, big production. It was obviously that was riding the coattails of Scream and what we had seen only, a year or so prior. But Halloween Resurrection was, it was probably in my mind the lowest point for the franchise, just simply because it felt like they were trying so hard. They wanted to make something successful, but I think it just happened so quickly. There wasn't a lot of thought that was put into it, and it just felt in many ways rushed, even though it was a few years, 2 or 3 years after we had seen H2O. So I also think the character of Freddy, although I agree, he did come off as like this really awesome, kind of sleazeball who he played that role really well. Like I think about the scene where Sarah goes to his hotel room at night and he's doing the fucking kung fu in the hotel room, and he sees her and he's like, "Oh shit, Sarah!" And he runs over. And I don't know if they were supposed to be thinking like that was like some booty call kind of thing. Like he thought she was showing up at his hotel. I don't know what they were going for there, but yeah. That's the vibe that I get. Excuse me. When I watch that, like I'm thinking he's going, "Oh, there's this young college girl showing up in my hotel room at whatever hour it was supposed to be, nighttime." Right. And, clearly he's, geez, see, I got stuff going on. He's got Tyra Banks. He's got Tyra Banks as the sort of his sidekick.
That producer character. Yeah.
Yeah. And, she was just, as you mentioned, like this just completely worthless character. They could have built her up more, right? I mean, all of a sudden it was just like, she was there. She talks about that was blocking the shot. She's got that interaction with I think it's Jeremy. I don't remember whatever the kid who's setting up the cameras in the Myers house. She's got that whole interaction with him, and then you really don't see a lot from her. I mean, you see her making her freaking cappuccino or whatever the hell it is, and like there's just not a lot of character development. And then pretty soon you look and she's freaking hanging from the rafters. I would have loved to have seen that death. I agree, it's one of the coolest death scenes in that film, and it would have been really nice if they would have shown that. But I think that was definitely a swing and a miss. I will tell you one thing that I don't know if it would add or take away to Halloween Resurrection, but an idea that I have always thought could have really fit in well is if somehow Sarah would have been more connected to the story, as far as maybe she didn't know that going into it. Maybe somehow Freddie, being a sleazeball, wanted her to be a part of this. He wanted her to be the character, and then to somehow over the course of the show begin to understand that she is somehow connected in a deeper way to the story, whether she is, Laurie Strode's niece, right? She's Laurie Strode's brother's daughter, and she's just finding out about this, or I mean, whatever. She discovers a photo album and it's her sitting on the steps of the Myers house with, I mean, I don't even know. I'm just like spitballing here, but I would like to have seen that character be developed a little bit more, other than just being this college girl who happens to become almost a star out of, this Dangertainment episode. And I know they show her scream, and he's like, he gets all excited because he hears her scream, and he's like, that's what we're looking for, or whatever he says. But I wish they would have done that, and what do you think? I mean, if they would have somehow figured out a way to ingrain Sarah or weave Sarah's character more into the story, do you think that's a good idea, a bad idea? And you can tell me if you think it's horseshit. Tell me.
Well, here's what I'll say, and it's probably something I should have mentioned when I was like sort of pitching. And by the way, I was only saying the good things about that movie. I could go on a much longer rant about the things that are wrong with that movie. But one thing that I do like is that once you kill off Laurie Strode, you take it back to the premise, which at this point had not been like come back to like they have now with the David Gordon Green trilogy. That Michael is no longer just searching after a family member. He's just a dude murking people, and they do happen to be in his house. So right. Like in Texas, that's cool. But it's like this. You're back to it could be anybody, rather than the family thing. That being said, and I know you didn't specifically say like Sarah is family, right. but to a degree, because it had been a family thing this whole time. If they would have said, it's tough because of H2O, but you could go, the Jamie thing did happen, and Jamie had PTSD and maybe, some shock therapy. She doesn't remember her past with Michael Myers. And this is now grown up Jamie in college. Sure. That could have been a cool thing, a cool twist if they could have pulled it off. I mean, right. That is one thing that they were able to pull off, Michael getting decapitated and come back. So maybe they could pull that off as well. But yeah, I think some sort of connection there could have been cool. But in the same hand, it's cool having just somebody random be the person that Michael is chasing after as well.
I agree. And I think, if we don't see like whatever the next sequel is, if we don't see it somehow tied back into another storyline, that will be the interesting part to me, is how they take the franchise forward and introduce a new character, new storyline, whatever it might be. And clearly, I can't say it for sure, but I have to assume about 99.9% certainty that Laurie Strode is not going to be in it. Jamie Lee Curtis is not going to be playing the character of Laurie Strode in any other films moving forward. So they will need to figure that out. And I do kind of like the idea that he's just this dude he's killing people, whoever, random. I mean, it's a little bit of more on like the Friday the 13th Jason spectrum, where, Jason was obviously being driven by, his past, his mom telling him to kill people, camp counselors, being pissed off at camp counselors, whatever that might be. But he was just very random in that sense. There was really no rhyme or reason to it. It was just like, if he came across somebody, he killed them. And you could say the same thing for Michael in the fact that he, throughout the films, if he came across somebody, normally he killed them. But then you have certain experiences or certain instances like, I think about in like Halloween 2 when he runs into the kid with the boombox and he just lets him go. Or in Halloween H2O when he steals the car from the mom and the daughter at the roadside bathrooms. Not in all cases he's just a killer, right? But I gotta
chime in. Halloween Resurrection, Harold, the guy in the sanitarium, he even hands him the knife,
right,
and lets him go about his business. You could go on. I just want
that's a great point. And I think that's the thing is like where I think Jason was just a little bit more vicious and brutal, and it was just he didn't care. He just killed everybody. That's not necessarily the case with Michael. So it would be interesting to see what they do moving forward, but. I love the fact that you are trying to justify why Resurrection is a good film. I think you're nuts. I think you're crazy, but hey, you're still my brother, and I have to say nice things about you when we're on the air.
That is true. And like, I know you're going to watch it every year for the rest of your life too.
Oh, absolutely. So, I will. Yeah.
Love it or hate it. It's part of us now.
It is. And that's, you bring up a great point. And it's something we've talked about over and over on this show, that even though there are films within this franchise that we're not the biggest fans of, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Halloween Kills, Resurrection, I am going to watch them every single year and I'm going to enjoy them. I'm going to have a smile on my face and I'm going to be happy when the movie is over that I watched it, because I'm just a huge fan of the franchise. And I know you're the same way.
Totally.
Couldn't have said it any better, Linda. So, okay, we talked about Halloween Resurrection and why you're trying to convince people to give it a rewatch. Let's switch gears, and I'm going to talk about one that is also has a lot of controversy around it, and a lot of people have sort of written it off and don't like it. I don't have necessarily the talking points that you do about Resurrection, but I want to talk about Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Halloween 6, and I don't remember exactly where it landed on my ranking, but Halloween 6 is one of those films when I first saw it, I was not a fan. I don't remember. I mean, did you like it when you first saw it, or were you?
It felt like it felt like they had tried to sort of update. It felt very 90s. It felt very like, I don't know. It felt cheesy to me, kind of like that straight to VHS that we were talking about earlier. No, sure. I remember even as a kid, I was like, it felt like a horror movie sequel 6 movies into a franchise.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how I felt about it too. And I did not. I'm still not a huge fan of the Curse of Thorn idea. And I shouldn't even say that I'm not a fan of the idea. I'm not a fan of necessarily the way that it played out, starting with part 5, where we really just had no explanation as to who the hell the Man in Black was, why he was there, why Michael all of a sudden had this freaking tattoo on his wrist. Like, there was just no explanation. I do think that, Daniel Farrens, who wrote Halloween 6, he was handed a giant pile of shit and said, here, sort this out. And I think he did a good job trying to bring in, like, the whole druid idea, and that this was sort of this curse that had been going on for years and years and years. But I think that the overall idea was a little bit of a swing and a miss. So, or I should say that I especially when I first started watching this film, I thought it was a huge swing and a miss. Now I think it's just sort of a little bit of a swing and a miss. I love this film for a few reasons. Number one, I think that in my mind, maybe outside of Halloween 4, this is the most Halloween season feeling movie to me, meaning it looks like, I mean, they obviously shot it at some point, I'm assuming in the fall, because it looks like legit fall outside. The leaves are, yellow and orange, and the leaves are falling down and things like that. And I know that they can recreate that, and they have recreated that in other films, but this to me just feels much more natural. Like when I watch it, I instantly am like, this is Halloween season. I want to be there right now. This is October. This is late October. We're rounding the corner. We're on the straightaway to Halloween. The Halloween day, October 31st. I think they did a really, really good job of that. I also think that the characters in this film, for trying to reintroduce old characters, i.e. Tommy Doyle, and to bring back Dr. Loomis for his final role in this franchise, I think they did a really nice job. I also like the fact that that Kara Strode is part of the family, right? So kind of going back to what I was saying with Sarah, they found a way to tie in newly introduced characters into the bloodline of Michael Myers, and that outside of Jamie, outside of Laurie, this bloodline still existed. Now, it would have been really interesting had they not done Halloween H2O the way that they did it, if that would have continued on, if Kara and, who knows, maybe even Paul Rudd playing Tommy Doyle, if they had continued on into a Halloween 7 instead of a Halloween H2O, and it expanded on that. So I like the characters in this. I thought the character development was really good. I love the family dynamic where you had the asshole dad, you had the mom who was kind of this mousy, skittish woman who was trying to take care of her daughter and her son who was born on a wedlock. You had across the street, the crazy old lady who, you end up finding out that she's a part of this whole thing, this cult. And, then obviously Tommy Doyle, who's this creepy guy who lives upstairs and he stares out his window and watches people. I thought the character development was really good. I loved some of the lines that they had in it. And then I think the other piece that I really liked about all this is George P. Wilbur was badass in this movie. He was obviously bigger and he was badder than he was in Halloween 4. And when we did our draft, I drafted George P. Wilbur in Halloween 6 as my Michael Myers, because yes, Nick Castle is the holy grail of all Michael Myers. He will always be the original. He will always be the OG. He's always the guy. I loved what George P. Wilbur brought to this film. The anger, the aggressiveness, and then just that mask was just mean looking. It was badass. It had, again, some of the classic Kirk look to it, but also very different, very distinct. And, one of the things that we've talked about before is how they missed with Halloween H2O and the mask. But if you're watching the opening of that film, you see the Halloween 6 mask as part of that. And I think that's credit to how awesome that mask is that we're actually saying Halloween H2O, even though it's a good film, would have been better if they had stuck with that Halloween 6 mask. And that's credit to, just how great that mask was in part 6. And it just gave Michael a mean and vicious look. Like there was just almost I'm trying to think of the word, but he just was so almost like dead in the face. Like there was just nothing there. And when they show him, it's almost like, they talk about the blank, pale, expressionless face, but there was something even more to that, where it was like, it was more blank. It was more expressionless. It was more, it was just like, there was something to it that I really, really liked. And combine that with the fact that George P. Wilbur was just much more aggressive, badass, brutal. I loved it. So, to me, as a fan of the franchise and as a fan of this film now, I was one of those people who didn't like it when I first saw it. And it took a long, long time for it to really sink in for me. And I'll be honest with you, the one thing that really, I think, set the hook for me and where I went, okay, this isn't so bad is when I saw the producer's cut. I like the producer's cut of this film much more than I like the theatrical cut, because I think they do a better job of explaining some of the cult stuff, why Michael is the way that he is, and just some more of that background kind of information. I also like the ending of the producer's cut a little bit better. I thought where they kind of missed a little bit on the theatrical version is how, Michael gets the shit beat out of him with this pipe. And it's just like he's gone. I mean, he's gone. You just don't know what happened, and then obviously you hear Loomis screaming, which I did like that, because that's sort of wrapping up and giving some closure to that character. Even though we knew he wasn't coming back because he had died, but I thought that was, they could have done better with that, and that's where I think the producer's cut they did do better with that, where the doctor. And I'm blanking on his name now because I keep thinking Dr. Sartain, but it's
that's what I'm thinking of too.
Yeah, I can't think of the dude's name right now, but whatever. Everybody knows what I'm talking about with this. The doctor is dressed up like Michael Myers, and Michael is gone. And I kind of think that's cool, because he is supposed to be this sort of cult leader, and he's in a sense covering for Michael so that Michael can escape and continue on. And I like that. I thought there was something cool to that. But overall, the film has grown on me. If you are one of those people who don't like Halloween 6 and you're like, man, Halloween 6 sucked. I like H2O. I like Halloween Resurrection. And I like, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I put everything above it, Halloween 6. I would encourage you to watch it again and disconnect yourself. Think of it a little bit different and disconnect yourself from the other films. Think of it as a standalone movie, because like I said, when they had Halloween 5 and this Man in Black thing, and you didn't really know, Dr. Wynn, I just thought of it. See, this is how crazy I am. Dr. Wynn. When Dr. Wynn is sort of introduced as he is the Man in Black, and that's what we saw in Halloween 5, even though you never saw his face, but you then come to find out that that's Dr. Wynn in Halloween 6. I think that's really cool, because you're tying all these characters together. But what's your take on Halloween 6? I just rattled off a whole bunch of shit. What's your take on it?
So I think, and as you were describing it, I really thought about George P. Wilbur's portrayal of Michael Myers in that film. And I think what you're talking about is so true, where I think even in like Rob Zombie, I'm spewing out like 90 sentences at once. The brutality of Michael in this film is fantastic. I think you've got sort of the angriest Michael Myers in the original series,
right,
by far here. But then you have this, obviously, the classic pale, emotionless face. And I think the contrast there is probably the best that it is in any of the films, where, I think like Rob Zombie's mask, maybe the clean was a little bit more like neutral, but once you get the scars and shit on there, it looks mean. It looks mean, and it matches the brutality of that character. Where in Halloween 6, you got your classic looking Michael Myers, sort of the Michael Myers we're familiar with. Obviously, he's got like hockey pads under the suit.
Yeah, he's the shoulder pads. Yeah.
But I think that like contradiction there, where we're used to Michael Myers. I always talk being a Swift Reaper. He's kind of this average build guy, goes in, kills, gets it done. Halloween 6, man, he is pulling no punches. He is brutal. He is mean. And it's all under that same blank mask. I love the way that you described it. It's just it's scarier that way to me. I think the characters, like you're saying, are great in that film. Obviously, I think Paul Rudd's character, even though he's a total weirdo, ends up being like kind of this like lovable character that we can get behind. And, despite him picking up a baby at random, think he's probably still a pretty stand-up guy. No, it's it's a solid movie, and I think like what you're saying, the producer's cut definitely made a huge difference for me watching that film. And anybody who's only seen the theatrical release, I would have to suggest to go watch that producer's cut, because I had never seen it. You told me to watch it, and it definitely raised in the rankings for me. My problems with the film are totally the Cult of Thorn thing, but I think, like you're mentioning, if you remove that from your watching experience and you go into it going, they're going to explain why Michael Myers is the way that he is verbatim, you'll come out of it with sort of a different outlook. As we were talking too, and maybe I'll get to this later, but I think when we were coming up with the idea for this episode, another thought besides Halloween Ends that came in was Halloween 3, but I think we need to give that episode or that film sort of an episode of its own.
For sure. Yep. And we'll absolutely do that. Because that film is, I think, even though that has almost now become this cult classic, I don't think you have including Halloween Ends, I don't think you have a more polarizing film at that time. Like at the time of release, take all of the films, I don't think you have a more polarizing film than Halloween 3, where literally like 90% of the people who saw it hated it, and yes, there's a lot of people who don't like Halloween Ends, but it's not 90%.
No. And if this was maybe even 10 years ago, I would say totally the most underrated film. But I, like you're saying, it's kind of earned its respect now,
right?
However many years later. But yeah, man, Halloween 6, I would argue, I think you did a better, I'll be honest, and you're the guest today. So
I'm the guest. Yeah.
Let me be nice. I think you did a better job, because I completely think Halloween 6 is far superior film to Resurrection. And I think it's definitely like slept on. People don't appreciate it the way I think they probably should. And there's some big hurdles to get over with that film. But for the goods of that film, I think it can outweigh the bads.
It's interesting because you just reminded me of something when you were talking there, that I am, as we talked about, you and I both watch all of the Halloween films in the month of October. There are some of the movies that, and Halloween Resurrection is one, where and you know what, it's probably going to make a lot of people mad, but Halloween H2O is probably one of these for me too, that I feel like they're a little bit of box checkers in my mind. And what I mean by that is I'm not necessarily super excited to watch them. I'm not exactly super excited to be pulling out the DVD or the Blu-ray and putting it in and sitting down for an hour and a half to watch it. I do it because it's Halloween. I love it. I want to watch all these movies because it puts me in the Halloween spirit. And if I didn't watch it then, I would feel weird watching it in, April or something, right? So I watch them all, not even consecutively, or in order, but I watch them all throughout the month of October. However, Halloween 6 has been one of those movies where I actually do get excited to watch that. And just recently, within the last probably 2 months, I even sent you a text message and I was like, dude, I might have to break my own rule and watch Halloween 6 because I'm really in the mood to watch this movie for some reason. And that's sort of the pull or the effect that film has had on me over the last, probably 5 or 6 years, that it's really grown on me. And I really genuinely like it. And it did make its way to the top half of my films in the ranking. And so when I look at the films, in general, I go to Halloween 6, and when I go to put that one in the DVD player, the Blu-ray player, I'm always like, okay, I'm focused. I'm watching this movie because I like it. I genuinely like it, even though there's a lot of people out there who don't. So that's where, at the end of the day, what this episode is about. I'm encouraging you, challenging you. If you are not a fan of this movie, if you haven't watched it in years, maybe you only saw it once, whatever it might be, go back and watch it again. And the same thing goes for Resurrection. I think that's the point that we're trying to make with this, is that give these films a second chance because they are good in their own right. separate them from other movies. Don't hold Halloween Resurrection to the same standard that you're holding Halloween 1978, because it's not going to match up. But keep these films, in your rotation of movies. Watch them every October. It'll make you feel more in the Halloween spirit, and it might make you like these movies a little bit more if you're actually watching them at Halloween time.
Couldn't say it better than my better. Ugh.
You can't say it at all. You can't say it at all. That's the problem.
I can't say a goddamn thing. No, I couldn't say it better than my.
So you can't talk. You know what? Okay, here's the deal. Blaine Duncan is back. The host of Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. He's back. You take a 2-week vacation. Austin's gone. See, now you got to flip the fucking screens. I know you couldn't have said it any better yourself. That's what you were trying to say. I totally understand. It's that brother psychic thing. I knew that's what you were trying to say, as did everybody who was watching this, as you were mumbling and stumbling. I'm just here to carry this show forward, even though you just did for the last 2 weeks.
Well, here's the truth, Blaine, is neither of us carry the show. It's the fans.
It is the fans.
The people who watch. And we have back from the depths of hell the fan of the week.
The fan of the week.
Now, we've talked a little bit about, the kind of people we want to be in this. We want new and exciting, and then we want these people that have dedicated an entire freaking room to Halloween, like we have, like both of us have. Right. And this week we got one of those. Now this is Gabriel at Pins Coach on Instagram, who is a fan and a friend of the show, and he has just an incredible freaking collection, man, down to the rugs. That's one thing I looked at this. I was like, anywhere you look, vertically, horizontally in this room, there are very few square inches that are not covered in Michael Myers. And I can't think of a better way. I hope this person sleeps in here. I hope Gabriel eats in here. I hope, because if I were him, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere else. This is an awesome freaking room. And like that statue, or I don't know if it's like a larger figurine of Michael. It is incredible. It's got the side of the house next to him. That would be a sort of a holy grail in my room. There's even a goddamn Michael skateboard.
There's a Michael skateboard. Yeah. No, Gabriel, awesome job. Actually, there's 2 skateboards. I see there's one down on the floor and then there's one up on the wall. Yeah, no, dude, this is freaking sweet. And Gabriel and I have been talking on Instagram a little bit, and I apologize it's taken so long to get you up here as fan of the week. As I'm sure you know, if you've watched now, I've been gone for a bit, and we've skipped out on this a little bit, but man, we could be more excited to have you being featured on this show, because this is a freaking badass look. I mean, this is very cool. Clearly, you've spent a ton of money on your collection, and I love the bust. That's probably my favorite. He's got the bust on the far right picture. That's super cool, and I want to get one of those. But yeah, the rugs are sweet. Everything is awesome. Guys, make sure you go check out Pins Coach on Instagram. Give Gabriel a like and follow, because this is freaking sweet, and this is why we love the fans of this franchise, because people are dedicated. I mean, this isn't like you get just people who are like, oh yeah, I'm a fan. No, people are fans like us, who bring you Halloween podcast, a new episode every freaking week. I mean, we're insane. We're nuts. We have nothing better to do with our time than to sit here and talk about Halloween and bring that to everybody out there. And we do have to mention, man, we have gotten a ton of followers in the last few weeks. I give you 100% credit for that, because clearly you've been carrying the flag while I've been out. But dude, legit, I bet we've gotten at least 100 subscribers just in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And that's a lot for us. Again, not comparing it to other podcasts and things like that, that's nothing. Some of those people get that in a day. But as a new and up and coming podcast that is, continuing to move forward, that's huge for us. So if you're watching this right now and you've not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe. It lets us know that you like what we're doing. Follow us on Instagram, obviously, at halloween.lives.podcast. And, just let us know that we're doing all right. And we're super thrilled to be doing this. And we've got some ideas that that are going to be coming out. Austin is still working on some kind of a cool little side project that hopefully he'll have launched at some point this summer, most likely. And then one other thing to mention is that Mr. Austin here is he himself has a birthday coming up this Sunday. So happy Halloween birthday to you. And make sure you guys wish Austin a happy birthday on Instagram and subscribe. And, let us know that you're watching and you're a fan of Austin, that he obviously carried the show on, without me. But yeah, man, happy birthday. We'll be celebrating this weekend. I'll be seeing you. I'll make sure I give you a noogie because you're my little brother. Is that what they're called? Noogies? I think they're noogies. I'll flush your head in the toilet or something. I mean, something,
Yeah.
Some sort of brotherly thing. But yeah, man, happy early birthday. And I'm excited to celebrate with you this weekend.
Totally. We're going to get hibachi and fill ourselves up to the brim. It's going to be incredible.
It's going to be awesome.
And well, thank you very much. One final thing that's coming down the pipeline that I've been pushing since we first talked about it is Live 25. We are at episode 20 right freaking now. And that means in a couple of weeks, it's going to be episode 25. And
25.
We are going to be obviously live, our first live show, hopefully of many. I hope it goes really well. We're going to be inviting guests, new and old. Fans of the show are going to be hopping on. If you want to be a part of that, again, go to Instagram at halloween.lives.podcast. And there's going to be some goddamn prizes, baby. $300 in total value of prizes.
That's right.
And you got to be there, though. So
you must be present to win. So yeah, you guys got to make sure you're checking that out. Live Halloween Live Lives Live 25. That's I believe it's July 7th and 9 p.m. Eastern is when we're going to be going live. So dude, that's going to be badass. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, hopefully if it goes well, it'll be the first of many that we do. And we've been talking about doing that. We've actually got another date that we're looking at a little bit later on about doing another live episode, kind of a big date. And that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, there's definitely so much coming down the pipeline, and we're getting closer and closer to the season of the witch, baby. So, stick with us for another 4 months and shit is going to get wild. 3 months because, to say October will be a fun month on this podcast is very true.
Yeah. So we got a lot of fun things planned.
Yeah, man. Well, Blaine, great to have you back.
Thank you.
I've done a horrible job outroing the show. So I was wondering if you could just do me this solid and
don't give you
hell out of here.
No, don't give yourself a hard time. You did awesome. And once again, thank you for carrying on the show and making this your only source for weekly Halloween content. I'm Blaine Duncan. That is my brother, Austin. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you next week with episode number 21. That's it for us now. Thank you guys for joining. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next week.